Florida is baking under some of the most dangerous heat it has seen in years. And the National Weather Service just made it official, issuing extreme heat watches and warnings across large stretches of the state. The number that matters most, the feels-like temperature, the heat index, is climbing toward a staggering 115 degrees Fahrenheit. And here's a detail that shows just how extreme this is. The city of Tampa recently hit 100 degrees as an actual air temperature, not the heat index, the real thermometer reading, which is the hottest temperature Tampa has recorded since record-keeping began there all the way back in 1890. Let that sink in. In a place famous for its heat, this is heat for the record books. And I want to pause on that Tampa record because it's more significant than it might sound, and it tells you something important about this event. You might think, Florida is hot. Of course, it hit 100 degrees. But here's the surprising truth. Tampa, and much of peninsular Florida, actually reaches a true 100-degree air temperature very rarely. In fact, before this event, Tampa had never officially recorded 100 degrees in more than a century and a quarter of record keeping. Why? Because Florida's intense humidity and the sea breezes coming off the surrounding warm waters usually kept the actual air temperature in the mid to upper 90s. The moisture in the air and the ocean influence act like a lid. So for Tampa to actually hit a full 100 degrees isn't just a hot day, it's a genuinely exceptional meteorological event, a sign that this heat is unusual even by Florida standards. When a place that has spent over 130 years never quite reaching a mark finally shatters it, that's your signal that atmosphere, and it's exactly why forecasters have been sounding the alarm so loudly, and it is genuinely life-threateningly dangerous. So today we're going to break down exactly what's happening across Florida right now, what these heat alerts actually mean, why a 115-degree heat index is so hazardous, and most importantly, exactly how to keep yourself and the people you love safe. This is a developing situation, so everything I'm sharing is based on the latest forecasts as of this recording. And make no mistake, heat is the deadliest weather threat there is, and this is the kind of event where the right information genuinely saves lives. But before we dive in, do me one quick favor, because it genuinely helps this channel. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. And if you're in Florida, tell me what the feels like, temperature is where you are, and how you're holding up. Are you under a watch, a warning, or an advisory? Let us know how it feels out there. And if you want to stay ahead of dangerous weather instead of getting blindsided by it, hit that subscribe button. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it could genuinely help keep you and your family safer. A thumbs up helps push this out to more people who need the warning. All right, let's get into it. Let's start with the current picture across the state, because Florida is a big place and the heat isn't hitting everywhere equally. The most dangerous conditions have been focused across northern and central Florida. In the Panhandle, the National Weather Service has had heat advisories in effect north of Interstate 10, and notably extreme heat warnings south of I-10 toward the coast, where heat indices have been climbing above 112 degrees to near 115 in spots. Around Jacksonville in northeast Florida, extreme heat warnings have been posted with heat indices forecast between 108 and 115 degrees. And across much of central Florida, including the greater Orlando area, extreme heat warnings have covered nearly the entire region, with the heat index expected to reach between 110 and 115 degrees. Even the state capital, Tallahassee, has been flirting with its first ever 100-degree days, which is remarkable for that humid, tree-shaded city. Interestingly, one part of the state has been somewhat less extreme. South Florida, including the Miami and Fort Lauderdale metro areas, has generally been under heat advisories rather than the more severe warnings, with heat indices in the range of 105 to 110 degrees, and more in the way of afternoon thunderstorms to provide some relief. So the worst of this particular event has been concentrated across the northern two-thirds of the peninsula and the Panhandle. There is some hope on the horizon. Forecasters have suggested that as the week progresses, increasing rain and thunderstorm chances could take the edge off, potentially bringing temperatures back down into the low to mid-90s later on. But for now, the dangerous heat is the story. It's worth understanding that in Florida, those afternoon thunderstorms are often the natural relief valve for the heat. On a typical summer day, the buildup of heat and humidity fuels storms that roll in during the afternoon, drop the temperature, and provide a break. Part of what has made this particular event so dangerous is that those storms have been suppressed in the hardest hit areas with below normal rain chances, letting the heat build unchecked day after day. So when forecasters talk about rain returning later in the week, that's genuinely good news. It's Florida's own cooling system kicking back in. But until it does, and until those watches and warnings are lifted, the smart move is to assume the dangerous heat is here to stay for the next several days and to plan accordingly. Don't count on relief that hasn't arrived yet. Now, you've heard me mention watches, warnings, and advisories, and understanding the difference between these three alerts is genuinely important because they tell you how serious the situation is and how much time you have. So let me break them down clearly, because this is knowledge that helps you respond correctly. Think of them as three escalating levels of concern. The least severe is the heat advisory. An advisory is issued for conditions that are dangerous enough to cause significant discomfort and, if you're not careful, could become a threat to your health. Generally, the Weather Service issues a heat advisory when the heat index is expected to reach roughly 108 to 112 degrees. It's the take this seriously and take precautions level. The next step up, and more serious, is the extreme heat warning, which you may also have heard called an excessive heat warning. A warning is issued when an extreme heat event is actually occurring, is imminent, or has a very high probability of happening. And critically, the warning is used specifically for conditions that pose a genuine threat to life. The Weather Service typically issues this when the heat index is expected to reach or exceed about 113 degrees. So when you see an extreme heat warning, like the ones posted across northern and central Florida right now, that is the Weather Service telling you, in no uncertain terms, that this heat can kill and you need to act accordingly. And then there's the Extreme Heat Watch, which is right there in the title of this video. A watch is a heads up. It's issued when conditions are favorable for an extreme heat event in the coming day or two, but there's still some uncertainty about exactly whether or where it will materialize. Think of a watch as, be prepared. This dangerous heat is likely on the way. While a warning is, this dangerous heat is here or imminent, act now. So when an extreme heat watch is issued, it's your signal to get ready before the worst arrives, to make sure your air conditioning is working, to plan your days around the heat, and to check that you and your vulnerable neighbors are prepared. The watch is your window to get ahead of it. And as those watches convert into warnings, that's when the danger peaks. So let's talk about that key number, the heat index, the feels like temperature, because understanding it is central to understanding the danger. The heat index combines the actual air temperature with the humidity to estimate how hot it truly feels to your body, and more importantly, how much stress it puts on you. Here's why humidity matters so much, and it's the crux of the whole thing. Your body's main way of cooling itself is sweating. As sweat evaporates off your skin, it carries heat away. But that cooling only works if the air can actually absorb more moisture. When the humidity is high, as it almost always is in Florida, the air is already saturated with water vapor, so your sweat can't evaporate efficiently. It just sits on your skin, dripping, doing little to cool you. Your body's primary cooling system gets throttled right when you need it most. That's why a 95-degree day in humid Florida can be far more dangerous than a hotter day in a dry desert. The humidity disables your natural air conditioning. And when the heat index climbs to 115 degrees, your body is under severe strain, and heat illness can set in quickly, even for healthy people. And here's something most people genuinely don't realize, which is why this matters so much. Heat is the #1 weather-related killer in the United States year after year. It kills more people, on average, than hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, or lightning, but it does so quietly. There's no dramatic footage of a heat wave tearing roofs off houses, no roaring winds on the news. Heat is a silent killer. It works invisibly, indoors and out, taking the most vulnerable first, often without the drama that makes other disasters feel urgent. And that quiet nature is precisely what makes it so dangerous, because people underestimate it. They think, it's just hot, I can push through. They skip the water, they keep working outside, they don't turn on the AC to save money, they don't check on the elderly relative down the street, and that underestimation is exactly how heat claims lives. So if there's one mindset shift I want you to take from this video, it's this. Treat extreme heat with the same seriousness you'd treat an approaching hurricane. It is every bit as capable of killing. And unlike a hurricane, it can sneak up on you without ever looking dramatic. Respecting it is the first and most important step to surviving it. This is where it becomes a genuine medical danger. So let me walk you through what heat does to the body and the warning signs to watch for, because recognizing them could save a life. Maybe your own. When your body can't shed heat fast enough, your core temperature starts to rise, your heart races to pump blood to the skin, and you lose fluids and salts through sweat. The first stage of trouble is heat exhaustion, and the warning signs include heavy sweating, weakness, dizziness, nausea, headache, muscle cramps, and cool, clammy skin. If you or someone around you starts feeling these things, that is your body waving a red flag. Get to a cool place immediately, get out of the sun, drink water, loosen clothing, and rest. Do not push through it. But here's the critical escalation you must know, because it's the difference between a scare and a tragedy. If the situation worsens, if the person stops sweating and their skin becomes hot and dry, if they become confused or disoriented, if they have a rapid pulse, a high body temperature, or if they collapse or lose consciousness, that is no longer heat exhaustion. That is heat stroke, and it is a life-threatening medical emergency. In that case, you call for emergency help immediately, and while you wait, you do everything you can to cool the person down, move them to shade or air conditioning, apply cool water or cold packs to their skin, and fan them. Heat stroke can cause organ damage and death within a short time if it's not treated fast. Knowing the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke and acting quickly is one of the most important pieces of safety knowledge you can have during an event like this. So who is most at risk? Because protecting the vulnerable is how we prevent the worst outcomes. The people in the greatest danger are the elderly, especially those living alone, whose bodies regulate temperature less effectively and who may not even realize how dangerously hot they're getting. Young children are highly vulnerable, as are people with heart conditions, respiratory illness, or other chronic health problems. Anyone who works outdoors, construction crews, landscapers, agricultural workers, roofers, delivery drivers, faces serious danger in this kind of heat because physical exertion generates enormous internal heat that the humid air won't let them shed. And critically, anyone without reliable air conditioning is exposed, because in Florida's humidity, an unair-conditioned home can become a dangerous heat trap. And let's not forget pets and animals who suffer in this heat just as we do. There's another dimension to this event that deserves special attention, and it's one of the most dangerous and least understood aspects of a heat wave: the nights. When we think about heat danger, we naturally focus on the blazing afternoon, but some of the greatest risk actually comes from how warm it stays overnight. Normally, the body gets a chance to recover during the cooler nighttime hours. That break is essential for your system to recuperate from the day's heat stress. But during an event like this, especially with Florida's humidity trapping the day's warmth, nighttime temperatures can stay dangerously high, sometimes barely dropping below the mid to upper 80s. When the night doesn't cool off, your body never gets its recovery period, and the heat stress accumulates day after day. This is especially deadly for people without air conditioning, whose homes stay hot all night long, and it's a major reason heat waves become more lethal the longer they drag on. So it's not just about surviving the afternoon, it's about having a cool place to recover at night too. If your home isn't cooling down after dark, that's a serious warning sign that you need to find somewhere that does. So let's get to the most important part: exactly what you should do to stay safe. This is where information turns into protection, so let me give you the clear, practical steps. First and foremost, hydrate, and start before you feel thirsty. By the time you're thirsty, you're already behind. Drink water steadily throughout the day and go easy on alcohol and caffeine, which work against you. If you're active or working outside, this is absolutely essential. A couple of important nuances on hydration, because doing it right matters. When you sweat heavily for hours, you lose not just water, but also electrolytes, the salts your body needs to function. So if you're sweating a lot, especially working or exercising outdoors, plain water alone may not be enough. Drinks with electrolytes or eating a little salty food alongside your water can help maintain the balance. At the same time, don't overdo it to the point of drinking excessive amounts of plain water very rapidly, which, in extreme cases, can be harmful. Steady, consistent intake is the goal, not chugging gallons at once. And here's a piece of the puzzle many people miss. Certain common medications can affect how your body regulates temperature or manages fluids. Some medications for blood pressure, heart conditions, allergies, and mental health can make you more susceptible to heat illness. This doesn't mean you should ever stop taking a prescribed medication, but it does mean that if you take regular medications, you should be extra cautious in this heat. And it's worth asking your doctor or pharmacist whether any of yours warrant special care during extreme heat. The same goes for anyone with a chronic health condition. Knowing your own personal risk factors lets you take the right precautions before trouble starts. And one more practical tip: cool your body directly, not just your surroundings. A cool shower or bath, a damp cloth on the back of the neck, cool water on your wrists and the pulse points, or even soaking your feet in cool water can all help bring your core temperature down quickly and give you real relief. These simple methods are especially valuable if you don't have air conditioning because they cool you directly rather than relying on the air. Combining direct cooling with plenty of fluids and time in the shade is a genuinely effective way to weather the hottest hours. Second, stay cool and treat air conditioning as your best defense, because in humid heat, it truly is. Since your sweat can't cool you effectively when the air is this saturated, and a simple fan mostly just moves hot, moist air around, actual air conditioning that both cools and dehumidifies is what genuinely keeps you safe in these conditions. If you have AC, use it, and don't let worries about the electric bill outweigh your safety. If you don't have reliable air conditioning at home, this is critical. Spend part of the day somewhere that does. Many communities open public cooling centers during extreme heat, And places like libraries, malls, and community centers offer refuge. Even a few hours in a cool environment during the peak heat of the afternoon can dramatically reduce your risk. There is no shame in seeking out cool air. It can save your life. Third, avoid the sun during the hottest part of the day, typically from late morning through the evening. If you must be outside or need to do strenuous activity, shift it to the early morning. Dress in light, loose, light-colored clothing. Wear a hat, seek shade, and take frequent breaks. If you work outside, talk to your employer about water, rest, and shade. And watch yourself and your coworkers closely for the warning signs. Fourth, and I cannot stress this enough, never ever leave children, elderly people, or pets in a parked car. Not even for a minute, not even with the windows cracked. In this kind of heat, the inside of a vehicle can reach lethal temperatures within just a few minutes. This preventable tragedy happens every single summer. Make it an absolute unbreakable rule. And fifth, check on the vulnerable people in your life. The elderly neighbor who lives alone, the relative with a health condition, anyone you know without air conditioning. During a dangerous heat event, a simple phone call or a knock on the door genuinely saves lives because the people most at risk are often the least likely to ask for help or even realize they're in trouble. Take a few minutes each day to check in on someone. It matters more than you know. Here's the honest bottom line. Florida is in the grip of a dangerous, potentially record-challenging heat event, with extreme heat watches and warnings posted across much of the state and what feels like temperature climbing toward 115 degrees, a level the National Weather Service explicitly classifies as a threat to life. Tampa has already hit its hottest temperature in over a century. Watch the alerts, understand what a watch and a warning mean, hydrate constantly, stay in the cool air during peak heat, protect the vulnerable, and know the warning signs of heat illness. Take this seriously. Don't let the fact that it's just heat fool you into dropping your guard. And you and your loved ones can get through this safely. I'm going to be tracking this heat event every step of the way. The watches, the warnings, the peak of the heat index, and when that relief finally arrives. If you want to stay ahead of it and keep your family safe, subscribe right now so you don't miss an update, because with dangerous heat like this, staying informed genuinely matters. Hit that like button to help this reach more people sweating through this across Florida. It could help someone take it seriously in time. And drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what's the feels like temperature where you are right now? Tell me. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next update. Stay cool, stay hydrated, check on each other, and stay safe out there, Florida.